Derek Ash! The Switch 2 has been out for 4 months now. And so we have had a pretty strong lineup of games to get accustomed with this system, understand what it's truly about. What is it capable of? What's exclusive? What does it enhance? So I wanted to get a gauge of how we all feel about the Switch 2 right now. But before we get into this, let's talk about a brand new game coming to Switch 2, Persona 3 Reload. Big special thank you to Sega and Atlus for sponsoring this video. One of the greatest RPGs of all time is out right now on Nintendo Switch 2. Dare to unleash and seal your fate with Persona 3 Reload. Set in modern-day Japan, Persona 3 Reload echoes the real world as we know it. You'll walk the streets of Tatsumi Port Island, go to the mall with your friends, create bonds, but with a twist. The Dark Hour. At midnight, only you and your friends can venture into the night to fight shadows. Lead your team to victory in strategic turn-based battles with devastating attacks. Balancing your two different lives is the name of the game, where hanging out with your buds is just as important as whacking a shadow in the face with a bat. Mix that with an unforgettable story with beautifully animated cutscenes, and you've got a truly unmissable RPG that's now available on the go. Persona 3 Reload is available right now on Nintendo Switch 2, and you can check it out by clicking my link in the description. Big thanks to Sega and Atlus for sponsoring this video. Thank you again to Sega and Atlus for the sponsor. So, over these 4 months, is there a particular game that screams Switch 2 to you? If you were to go through the entire library, what is the system all about right now? What is the big game, in your guys' opinion?
I mean, in my opinion, it almost has to be Donkey Kong Bonanza.
I mean, right?
That is the system definer at this point. And, you know, it's already up there, like making comparisons to Super Mario Odyssey, which was also a big 3D platformer for Nintendo in the Switch 1's initial year. This very much feels like that. And it also feels like not the only, but the one truly unique game for the system. And the fact that we only have one so far, this far into it, I think people, I can see people being a little mixed on their opinions on the Switch 2 as of right now.
I don't feel like most people know what Switch 2 can do right now, because I think the two big Nintendo games, Bonanza and Mario Kart World, they go for scope with the horsepower. So they still kind of look like, they don't look like Switch games, but they don't look too far evolved from a Switch game. It's more like a bigger Switch game doing different things, which is cool, but as a hardware showpiece, I think we're still kind of waiting for that massive game. And I think the two right now, one of them's in the future, but the one that's on store shelves is Star Wars Outlaws, because it does ray tracing by default. Everything in that game is lit by ray tracing, and it's really impressive how well it runs. And then in the future, we've got Resident Evil Requiem, which is also a ray tracing game, current gen only. And I think looking at those two is like, man, the Switch 2 is actually really powerful, but I think the current lineup isn't really showing that.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't also at least shout out Street Fighter 6. Obviously, It is full visual parity with PlayStation and PC and everything, but it still looks really good on Switch 2. And I feel like kind of serves as an early visual showcase, at least partially, of what Switch 2 is capable of, right?
Yeah. And PS4 has definitely kept things really high up there right now. So we've got like Shadow Generation. Street Fighter 6 is also a PS4 game, so is Cyberpunk. And it is cool having PS4 level games on a handheld. It is really cool. But I think it goes beyond that though, with games like Requiem and Star Wars Outlaws. So it'd be super interesting to see what the future holds, especially on the Nintendo side. But that's kind of a blank right now.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see Age of Imprisonment, right? Because, Age of Calamity, great as the game was, rather infamous for its visual and especially performance problems. And I think seeing a game with that kind of visual fidelity and actually running properly, hopefully at 60 FPS, and from the previews we've seen, it looks like it probably will, is going to be a real feast for the eyes, right?
It really should be, and everything I've seen from it very, very much seems smoother, more enjoyable experience than Age of Calamity. And you can absolutely have fun with Age of Calamity. Age of Calamity is a fantastic game, but as Ash said, it's not going to win any rewards for performance, especially multiplayer. But
Right.
it does seem like the two games that we have left for this year will really show off what the Switch 2 is capable of as far as visuals and so forth is going to be Age of Imprisonment and Metroid Prime 4. Pokemon to a lesser degree, maybe Kirby Air Riders, but I think there's some I think that's going to pop in color, but I don't think it's going to be inherently impressive.
Well, Prime 4 is going to be 4K and 120 FPS, like not at the same time, but different modes. And it has mouse controls, which I feel like is another thing. Not that much of the existing library is really showing right now, but Prime 4's got all of it, so that's really cool. And speaking of 120 FPS, I think there aren't that many games showing it, but Hollow Knight Silksong is a huge one, both docked and handheld. It's 120. Same for Mina the Hollower. We've had a demo for that showing 120, and it's really cool seeing that little screen be so fluid. But it's another thing like horsepower, where it's just there aren't that many examples really, showing what it's capable of right now.
Mm-hmm. Hades 2, I believe, is also at that 120 FPS. I remember that being a big selling point for it.
In docked it is, yeah. Handheld,
okay.
not for some reason, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I'll be curious to see where Sonic Racing Crossworlds ends up in terms of performance and visual parity with other platforms. Obviously, it's out on every platform right now except for Switch 2 specifically. And that game is a real looker on PS5. I've been putting a little bit of time into it recently. And it'll be exciting to see where that ends up on Switch 2.
Yeah. I think over the last 4 months with Switch 2, I definitely want to see more on the tech side, but I keep saying like Switch 2 feels more like an extension of Switch 1. And I think that is true, but there's also never been nothing to play. Like every week it feels like there is a game coming out. Maybe it's not big system generation defining games, but there is always something. And in these 4 months, there's been just quality, especially in the last month. Just feels like there's constant games releasing right now. So it's hard to feel like buyer's remorse because I'm always playing my Switch 2.
Yeah, it's a matter of where do you want to play these games, because you obviously a lot of these games are coming out on multiple systems. I think barring Hades 2, because Hades 2 is exclusive to the Switch 2 and Switch 1, I assume, until it comes to the other systems and PC, of course, which it did initially as well, and that's already getting a lot of praise and whatnot. And it's fascinating comparing this first year of Switch 2 to the first year of Switch 1, because there is some parity with how they're kind of approaching it. We have an early Mario Kart game, you have a sort of system defining platformer on it. We don't have the grand scale epic that is Breath of the Wild or anything like that, and it's hard to say that that's actually going to be coming out. I mean, maybe Metroid Prime 4 will meet that. I kind of doubt it, just because of the open aspect of it. But I think what might be driving people to be like not as excited for the Switch 2 is that it's not exclusives. Nintendo fans like their exclusives, and we're not really seeing that. Like one of the, John and I have been consistently doing our top 10s, building towards a final all-encompassing one, and a lot of people question my decision to have Switch 2 featured. Or they're like, are there 10 games to really say anything, especially because by the time the poll comes out, we're not going to have Metroid Prime 4 or Age of Imprisonment or anything like that. Is it worth doing at this point? And I think there's still value. In assessing where it's at right now. Obviously, this is not defining. It's going to change, but as a sort of putting it out there, to see how people feel as of right now. I think there is value in seeing where people are kind of landing in their opinions on the Switch 2 and its lineup.
Yeah,
it's just a little tricky because the only true exclusive right now, well, 2 true exclusives right now are Mario Kart and Donkey Kong, and then soon there will be Age of Imprisonment. But even once Metroid Prime 4 hits, that's not technically exclusive. It's Switch 1 as well. So really, by the end of the year, in terms of first party stuff, we've really only got 3 true exclusives. 4 if you want to count Switch 2 Welcome Tour, right?
Well, 5 if you include Welcome Tour and Air Riders.
Oh, my bad. Air Riders. Yeah. Okay. So 4 to 5 exclusives by the end of the year for Switch 2, which just puts it in kind of a tricky place in terms of having a discussion like this in terms of, where you rank it and how you're ranking things against Switch 2 editions of Switch 1 games, like Zelda, like Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And it's tough because some of those games, they're not Switch 2 exclusives, but I just got done playing Kirby and the Forgotten Land Switch 2 edition with the whole Star-Crossed World stuff. Not only does that make an already stellar game even better, but like the whole 60 FPS bumps for the regular game, and then all the Star-Crossed World stuff, the cool graphical effects they're doing with the crystalline landscapes. That game is gorgeous, and I don't really know that stuff that they do with the new stages could have been done to parity on Switch 1. So it's just kind of a weird situation that Switch 2 finds itself in, right?
Yeah,
I think that's kind of the value of the Switch 2 in a way, because you have the ability to do stuff that you would not be able to do on the Switch 1, whether it is that higher fidelity, those better FPSs when it comes to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and so many others. But also, we've had so many older games released now on the Switch for that take advantage of that mouse mode. This is our opportunity. We now have Mario Paint. We have Mario and Wario.
Yeah,
like,
Mario.
Yeah,
older
so
games
cool.
that never could come before because it required a specific add-on now are viable. And I think it's very cool what the Switch 2 is allowing in terms of preservation and in terms of making older games exciting to play again.
Virtual Boy.
Virtual Boy. To some weird degree. It's a very odd thing where it's not showy, but it's cool.
Mm. It's very nice as an early adopter because you probably own a Switch. You probably have a big back catalog of games. And as an extension of the Switch, we've got those Switch 2 editions like Ash was talking about, like Kirby and Mario Party and the Zelda upgrades. And they're not all equal, but it is nice to get a full technical enhancement. And then I enjoyed Zelda notes. I enjoyed walking around the world and learning new pieces of lore. But Kirby is far and away the most ambitious
so
of those
good.
expansions. It's not even close. That's just, it's so good. But then we have all those free Switch games, those free updates. There's an update to Odyssey, 3D World, Captain Toad, Link's Awakening, Echoes of Wisdom, Game Builder Garage, ARMS, Big Brain Academy, Clubhouse Games, New Super Mario Bros. U, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Splatoon 3, and then also kinda Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. That launched at the same time. But those are all really substantial, especially Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That's a remaster of that game, pretty much. And and I guess the same for Echoes of Wisdom and Link's Awakening. Like those had lots of performance issues, and they just iron them all out, make them 1440p. In Galaxy's case, it's 4K. Those are huge. And like Switch 1 would get a Mario Kart port, a Pokken port, and that's cool. But just being able to freely upgrade and make those games look nicer, that's huge value.
Yeah, and if you didn't play those games on Switch 1, you're feasting right now because you're playing the best versions of those games and you have them all available for you all at once. Like, imagine if you didn't play Mario Odyssey on Switch 1. The version of that game you're getting to play now is insane. Same with, like, as you said, Pokemon, and even games like, I put hundreds of hours into Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and was perfectly fine with the way they ran and looked generally on Switch 1. But I played, a little bit, at least the opening portion of Breath of the Wild in the Switch 2 edition, and it almost feels like I'm doing something forbidden. Like I'm doing something, I'm playing it in a way I'm not supposed to play it, because playing that game in 60 FPS is just, it feels magical. It feels like it's not supposed to run like that, but it just almost completely changes the game.
Yeah, and this works for every backwards compatible game as well. They don't all get these same upgrades like that, but everything that was capped to a certain frame rate will pretty much hit that cap now. And then there's some mystery games which just go beyond their cap, and they shouldn't. Right. Like Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle. That's a 30 FPS game, and now it's just magically 60. Probably a double buffer VSync or something, but it runs at 60 now. You get games like Bakaru, which really struggled to hit 60. Now just fluid 60. Same with Neo World Ends With You. The Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, that's a rock solid 60 now. And then all those hundreds of games that run at 30 but couldn't quite keep it, they're all there now. Yeah. And that's most of what I've done with Switch 2, is just playing just old Switch 1 games that I didn't finish or drop for whatever reason. So I did the GTA trilogy on Switch 2. I went back to Harvestella. I did the Dragon Quest 3 free patch, which basically makes it the PS5 game portably. Nice. That rocked. Mm-hmm. Weirdly inconsistent, though. Some publishers are like, you free patch, free patch, free patch. You're gonna pay $10 for this one, or we're not going to give you an upgrade for this one. I don't know how do they throw darts at a dartboard and just go with whatever it lands on?
I guess
It's so weird.
It's all over the place, but you're right in that it makes it viable. Like I think one of the biggest examples of that is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah.
People generally agree that it's good, but just held back by the frame rate and the just technical issues of it. And while they're not all solved, it makes it much more playable this time around and makes Scarlet and Violet better in retrospect, which cannot be taken away from that. I mean, that's really important. That's really cool. So yeah, it's a refinement. And as we're all friends with Ant Dude, and he's been a pretty vocal defender of the Switch 2, and he puts it in a pretty it's a frame of mind. This is not a brand new system in the way that you typically think. It's a continuation of the Switch. It is just rolling right into it, and maybe there's some growing pains here and there. But if you look at it as just a continuation of their support there, it kind of does make sense why there's not huge stuff. It's just a new branch.
It's been the same for everyone, hasn't it? Like with Xbox and PlayStation, their current gen systems aren't really all new. For the longest time and still today, a lot of the library is cross-gen. It's just more powerful PS4 versions, and that's kind of what we have here as well. And to a stronger degree, I feel, because Switch 1 games are the gap between Switch 1 and Switch 2 is far wider than the gap between PS4 and PS5. It's been pretty interesting.
Well, and I mean, I think we've kind of long since, I'm sure I've mentioned this in other discussions too, but I think we've long since passed that point of diminishing returns when it comes to visual fidelity per generation, right? It's, we're not in the 16-bit to 32-bit days anymore where there's this giant jump. We're just not there anymore between even PS1, PS2, PS2, PS3, where, graphics are amazing kind of across the board now. Sure, you can cherry pick exceptions no matter where you look, but in general, games just look really good these days. So you have to look at other stuff when you're really considering the gap between, a generational console release like Switch 1 and Switch 2. And I think we've seen that bear out in things like Switch 2 edition to Switch 1 games, mouse controls, as you said, John, earlier, stuff like that. It like for even with PS5 and PS4, there is a visual difference, but not a huge leap. And for me, the thing that made the difference with PS5, for example, was the DualSense. When I played Astro's Playroom and felt the haptics and the adaptive triggers, I'm like, oh, this is the difference, not the graphics. This, how I'm playing, is the difference. And I think you have to consider stuff like that when talking about the Switch 2 versus Switch 1 as well.
Yeah. I also think being a handheld, it does make just portable PS4 games really cool. One of the games that people always rave about is Final Fantasy VII Remake on Switch 2. And it's the integrated version, but it's a PS4 game. So it shouldn't be like that crazy, but you see it running on, the handheld, and you're like, man, like we've come a long way. Yeah.
It's crazy how good Remake looks.
Just in general, just looking through a lot of these games, it also has that handheld factor of like, speaking of Final Fantasy, Tactics just came out.
Yeah.
That's almost a better game to play on Switch too, because you can just pull it out handheld, play a little bit, kind of gives you that vibes of the vibes of Tactics Advance.
Sure.
So you just jump in there, and I think that's a great way to play it. You still have that wow factor of playing something on a handheld like with Cyberpunk, and I think that wow factor is still there in that case because you have Steam Deck, but I've seen the comparisons between Steam Deck Cyberpunk and Switch 2 Cyberpunk, and it is a night and day difference there. And I think where Steam Deck might have an advantage over the Switch 2 is the fact that it just has a wider breadth of games, and it can do a little bit more with it as far as cracking things open and whatnot.
Sure.
But I think Switch 2 still has value in a more legitimate piece of hardware and certainly just out there more. And I find myself even just using Switch 2 like I did the Switch 1 initially, where I have like a major game that I'm playing, but then I'm also supported by a bunch of indies where I'm playing Silksong. Once I finish Silksong, I'm definitely going to dive right into Hades 2. And it kind of works out because I'm waiting. by waiting for Hades 2, I can get the physical version, which is actually on a cartridge. It's not a key card.
Right.
So that's cool to support.
Not to disparage Steam Deck any further, because it is cool.
Oh, it's very cool.
But like Star Wars Outlaws doesn't really run on Steam Deck. You know, it's a ray tracing heavy game. There's been several games showing that the Switch 2 is more capable, but also just as a device, it's way sleeker. Like you look at this thing, and it's just, you know, it's a tablet with detachable controllers, but the magnetism is so elegant.
Yep.
And when it comes to the wrist straps, which you might actually want to put on when using mouse mode because it glides easier, I hated the wrist straps on Switch 1. They felt like you slide those things on, it doesn't feel like they're coming off. Whereas on Switch 2, they just pop off. And I find sometimes I just fiddle with the Joy-Con. You know, just keep like magnetically taking them on and off. It's just the ultimate fidget device. But it's such nice hardware. Like the buttons feel great. The sticks feel great. The silence to the sticks too. Like you whack them around and they don't really make noise. And then the Pro Controller, that material in that thing is so nice.
Oh, so nice.
It feels so premium. Yeah, I will say I would rather have the Steam Deck with me in a situation of self-defense because that thing is chunky and you can wield that as a melee weapon. But so the Steam Deck does excel there. But no, I'm kidding. The Steam Deck is a great piece of equipment. But the Switch 2, the Steam Deck is chunky. The Switch 2 feels so much lighter and just sleeker, just to hold in your hands, right?
Yeah. Derek touched upon game key cards, and they've definitely been an issue with the first 4 months. We have had very few games on actual game cards. It's mostly Nintendo and a few other publishers. Like Marvelous is going for game cards, and Hades 2 is going for a game card, which is kind of nuts. But just to fill in those who've somehow missed it, the game cards are only 64 gigabytes, so it's very expensive to put your game on a game card. And for stuff like Hades 2, it honestly doesn't make sense for them to do it, but they are. So that's awesome. Whereas a game key card's super cheap. Nothing is on the cartridge. You just download it. Is this going to be normalized? Do we just have to accept this? Or like, what are you feeling?
I don't know. I think it's too early to say because the reaction to key cards has definitely been negative, and I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if it's enough to reverse fortunes on it. Whether there's like, oh geez, we're losing sales, but look how much this one's selling. I don't have enough data for all that, but I mean, I like that the Hades 2 is adding value because I think it's going to be $10 more physically in the case of the Switch 2 versions, but it also includes a full color character compendium booklet, so you're actually getting a bit of a manual there, and a soundtrack download code and a reversible color cover. Like they're going kind of all out with this thing, which I think needs to be rewarded. Like I get the excuse you want to have a game key card because it loads faster when it's digital, but it's like, might as well just get it digital. Like why is my box even there other than the fact that you can trade it in if you decide to, so you have that aspect of it. It's very odd. And as Brandon brings up in the live audience, what happens to those digital licenses in 20 years? Do we get to keep them? Do we?
Yeah. I don't think I'm that worried because you can still download your Wii games. The Wii Shop channel's been shut down, for however long now. But you can still go on there and re-download your Virtual Console and WiiWare stuff. So I'm not that worried that we're going to lose our games.
Amazingly, you can still buy PS3 games because that they were going to shut down the PS3, the PSN. People raised the stink, and Sony has not touched it since. It is still available that you can go on there and buy games.
Yeah, the big issue right now is it was so nice with Switch 1 that everything was just plug and play. You put a cartridge in, you don't have to download anything, maybe a patch or whatever, but the game was playable. You just put it in the cartridge, you can play, and that's nice when Switch 2 does it. It's nice to put in that Donkey Kong cartridge and just go. And you're getting games that are 50 gigabytes as standard now. It's like Street Fighter 6, that's a 50 gigabyte game. Hitman, I think that's like 50 gigabytes. You get games like a Split Fiction, which are like 70 gigabytes. And I'm sure we're going to get 100 gigabyte games as well. And to have at least part of that put on a game card to save us our storage, because there's only 246 gigs on the actual thing itself, which goes really fast. It is an issue. You can't put that much on your Switch 2. You've got to juggle things now.
Especially if you didn't opt for extra storage via a micro SD card.
And I'm still waiting on getting my extra cards. I've been very picky and choosy about what I put on my system.
Yeah.
Mm.
For better or worse, it does kind of feel to me like we're trudging toward a, if not digital only future, a majority digital future. And I don't know if the backlash to game key cards is going to be enough to offset just the reality of how expensive it is for developers, as Natalie touched on in our live audience chat, how expensive it is for devs in this economy. It's expensive not to use them. And I feel like the reality of what we're looking at with that kind of with physical media nowadays just kind of means they're going to stick around whether we like it or not. And I'm not saying
it's better than the alternative of it just being digital only, though. Like at least you can shop around, maybe find it cheaper, maybe get it secondhand, maybe sell it. Like there's still advantages over digital to them. They're not worth it.
There absolutely is, but I think there's also been in recent years a reevaluation because of how digital stores have been handled, where people are realizing that having something physically is much more advantageous. Like I think I forget the natural disaster that happened, that people lost power for a lot of times, or the internet was out, but they still had some bit of power.
Yeah.
And so because they didn't have internet, they couldn't access online stores. All the stuff they had downloaded or various things like that, they couldn't get access to. However, they still had access to DVD players and Blu-ray players. And so Walmarts were completely sold out of every movie. Like it was just gone. And it really does show how physical media does have its place. And I think people are realizing, like, if I buy this, it's mine. And that's something, like, I used to build up a movie collection, but once Netflix came around, I really did kind of stop.
Yeah.
Because it felt like, well, why do I need that? Because it's right there. But in recent years, like, oh, damn, I think I made a mistake because now I don't have these movies and they're maybe not available. So I think having those physical collections, even if, like, as people will say, like, well, you have the physical version, but it's missing all these updates. At least I can still play it at a baseline. Like maybe not the best version of it, but it's still, available.
Yeah. I hope more developers start doing just regular game cards. It seems like Nintendo are always going to do it, so that's nice. Whenever Zelda comes along, it's going to be on a game card. Whenever, Metroid Prime 4, that's going to be on a game card. It's nice to have that standard at the very least. And speaking of Nintendo, we haven't really talked about Mario Kart World, which is probably the biggest game on the platform. And I see online the reception of this game goes all over the place. Some people are calling it a dead game. It's not a dead game. People play this constantly. I think what they mean by that is it hasn't been updated, which, it's had patches, but it's not had a big content update. However, it's still relatively fresh. It's a 4-month-old Mario Kart game. There is still a lot to dive into there. Are you guys still playing Mario Kart World?
I was for a good while. And I feel like I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I was playing it for a good while. And then another game came out that kind of usurped it for me. I've been playing a lot of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, and it's kind of replaced it for me in my kart racing. I still like it, and I'm going to go back to Mario Kart when it gets an update, but I think I personally have been spoiled by Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and the Booster Course Pass. Because I feel like I played a good 50, 60 hours of Mario Kart World, but I feel like I've had my fill. And Sonic Racing comes along, and it has mechanics that I really enjoy. It has physics that I really like, the boost, the drifting, and I don't know. It's just kind of taken Mario Kart's place for me right now. But I'll be there first in line when we get a new content drop for Mario Kart World, because it's a great game, and it's certainly not a dead game.
Yeah, there's value in Mario Kart World. It just feels so much more limiting compared to what we left with Mario Kart 8.
Yeah.
Like, they set such a high bar for themselves, and having this open world that you can explore is cool, but the rewards are so minor that it makes you wonder if it's worth it, other than just doing it for the sake of doing it and seeing all the challenges and exploring and going for that completionist mindset where it's not about the reward, it's about the journey type thing. And I've actually heard from some friends that they like, because my standard of Sonic racing games is still transformed.
Same. Yeah.
And I've heard a few of them say that they actually kind of prefer Crossworlds to Transformed, which blows my mind.
It's really good, man.
So it's really like, good. And I still put Transformed above Mario Kart 8 just in pure fun factor. And if Crossworlds is that good, yeah, I can see why you kind of prefer this over Mario Kart World in terms of mechanics and what it does and brings out there. I don't know. I've not played it myself to really say one way or another, but I think there's plenty to enjoy about Mario Kart World. It's just a matter of what you're looking to get out of it, and that's where the disparity comes in.
I think I would still play rather play Mario Kart World multiplayer. Like like I think I much prefer the online multiplayer experience of Mario Kart World over Sonic Racing, but single player Cross World is kind of taken it for me.
That's all I do in Mario Kart World. I don't just play the open world. I don't just play Grand Prix. I go online. I play with randoms, mostly in the knockout tour. Like every
knockout tour is where it's at for me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not every evening anymore, but most evenings a week I'll play a few rounds of knockout tour, and it's still so fun. And like one thing we haven't really touched on Mario Kart World is mechanically, it's pretty incredible. You get all those parkour moves. You can take all these really cool shortcuts. And I also love just how chaotic Knockout Tour is, because you can be right at the back and then you get an item and you can just cut across all these lengths of land and somehow get back into first place. It's a flip of the coin how good you can be, but it's always so exhilarating when you're able to pull that stuff off, and when you just about make it in before the cutoff point, it's always fantastic.
Oh yeah, Knockout Tour is where the life of that game is at for me. That's pretty much all I play anymore. When I'm playing that game online, it's just I don't even bother with regular multiplayer, just straight up Knockout Tour. I think my issue with the mechanics of that game, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the way it's kind of felt like to me, is that the wall riding, grinding, parkour type stuff, it doesn't really, unless you're playing at the top of the highest of the top level, it doesn't really seem to afford you much of an advantage beyond just really good drifting. If you're taking the right lines and you're drifting really well, most of the time, the parkour stuff and the grinding stuff isn't really going to help you. At least I think
it can. It depends on the circumstance. Like if you're just jumping onto a bus and flipping off it, you're probably not getting that much of a boost. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of shortcuts in there that are way faster if you're doing parkour.
Okay, all right.
Mm-hmm. I haven't played around with those mechanics enough to really say one way or another, other than just I'm not great at them still. It's like trying to get those wall jumps and so forth. But I mean, it's obviously selling well. It's going to be an evergreen title. I think a lot of discussion around Mario Kart World is just centered around the fact that it's $80. And that immediately just put a target on its back, where it had to be the best if you're going to be like expect us to pay that much money. And it's when it's just really good, that's not good enough.
But we also didn't pay that much money, because we all paid like
I only paid 50 for it. True.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, it goes back to the physical idea.
Yeah,
but
true.
How you want to treat that whole thing. I think we all suspected it, just if we're going into again some of the knock on the problems with the Switch 2. But I think it's almost confirmed at this point. The game chat is going to be a dead feature. Like I've not used it once other than us testing it out, and I just don't. Have you guys actively used that at all? Like it feels like so.
It's too bad because it actually works really well, especially for Nintendo and online features and chat features. But yeah, it's one of those things that, it's like the rooftop parties for Switch 1. It's something that looks really cool, but it's just not like something that is actually going to be used that much in real life, right? Like Wii U chat, the Wii U chat feature, whatever it was, the Wii U calling feature. Like it's cool on paper, but who's really going to do that in real life all that often? And I've never once been in a situation outside of testing with you guys that I'm going to be like, I'm going to call a bunch of friends. We're going to do game chat. Like it just doesn't happen in real life, but it's such a good feature.
I do wonder if it's just not really for enthusiasts though, because I don't use console chat features on any platform. I don't use on PS4. I don't use on PS5. I don't use on Series X. I use Discord because it's just easier for everybody, and that's not going to be true. When Switch 2 at Christmas, when it gets in the hands of families, they probably aren't going to be having their phone in their lap or be at their computer. It will be easier for them just to game chat. So maybe you'll find a second life with
I hope
more
so.
casual
I
audience.
just don't see a lot of games utilizing it. I think the last big one was Mario Party.
Yeah, I mean, all the camera stuff's pretty cool. Like, yeah, Mario Kart World has the camera feature as well. That stuff's always neat. But yeah, if personally, I'm not using it now.
Yeah, and I wish I was, because it is a genuinely great feature, and it was implemented better than I ever could have hoped for. But I just don't really find myself in many real life situations where I use it.
Yeah, Game Share though, brilliant. Game Share's
Yes,
fantastic.
Game Share is amazing. Yeah.
I've not used it that much because we're still in the early days. But Captain Toad, I feel like, is the highlight right now because it makes Captain Toad an online multiplayer game where you can play co-op with anyone regardless of whether they actually own the game or not. And you can game share locally, but I feel like online is really the way to do it because you can just play with your friend anywhere, no matter of whether they own the game, and that's just super rad.
I'm still blown away by the demonstration we did where it's like you two are actively seeing different things. Like it's not sharing the same screen. You're actively controlling your own cameras and progress. Like that's
really
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want a lot more mouse games as well, because the mouse is cool, especially when you can do it dynamically. So you're playing like Wii Remote style split Joy-Con, you just put it down, and all of a sudden you're playing a first person, well, you're moving in with the mouse. Metroid Prime 4 is a good showcase of that. And I can't wait to play games like Plants vs. Zombies and whatever else comes in the future. But right now, there aren't that many showcases, and games like Cyberpunk, I want to be able to go dynamically, but you can't. You've got to toggle in the options. So it feels good when you're on foot and you're playing with a gun just aiming around, but then you get in a car and it's like, I don't want to be playing in mouse mode anymore. I want to pick it up. There's growing pains there.
It just reminds me real quick about how Metroid Other M treated like switching to the shooting mode.
Yeah.
I bet that would take advantage of it, going back and forth between that. Just put the mouse down. Now you're in first person and exploring and all that. It's not great, but it just reminds me of that.
It's time to port Other M.
Yeah, let's get Other M remake. It's time.
Yeah, that's Nintendo's big Metroid game for 2026. Other M Switch 2 edition. Another game that would really benefit from being able to switch between regular and mouse controls on the fly, and is coming out in just a couple of weeks, is Power Wash Simulator 2. And they actually, I just watched the trailer for it, the release trailer, and they have a new surface cleaning tool that you can use. And I'm thinking, oh my God, the surface cleaning tool with mouse controls would actually be perfect. I'd love that game, or the original, and I'd love to see them use mouse controls for 2. That would be really cool.
We haven't really mentioned the free games like Fortnite and Apex Legends. They have Switch 2 editions, and they are just completely different to the Switch versions. There's like night and day difference. Both support mouse as well. So I think there's a good argument. Like playing Fortnite and Apex on Switch 2 is a great way to play, especially Apex. I think that's just a fantastic way to play.
I've been playing a little bit of Rocket League on Switch 2, just when I'm like on the phone and taking a phone call. I have 5 minutes just to kill, and obviously mouse controls aren't valid here, but that game plays exceptionally well on handheld mode. Like just playing, like it is such a smooth way to play that game. And Becca in chat knows we played a lot of Rocket League in our time, so I'd be the first to criticize the experience on Switch 2 if it was not a good one, and it's really good.
All right, guys. Before we end up, I just want to. Is there a particular title you felt like you've had a really great time with? One that isn't necessarily one that easily comes to mind. Like we've talked about Mario Kart World and DK Bonanza. Is there a lower key title that's really defined the Switch 2 for you? And I'll go ahead with I'll say 2. I was really impressed by No Man's Sky. Definitely not my kind of game, really, but I played the Switch 1 version first and then played Switch 2 after. And what an upgrade that is. They just basically remade the game for Switch 2. It's like a completely different build. That was very cool. But I'll go back to Dragon Quest 3, though. I loved playing that game on Switch 2. And like 30 FPS is fine for an RPG. But when you go to 60, it just feels so much more fluid. And I think Dragon Quest 3 on Switch always felt like there's a little bit of like weird latency to it. And Switch 2 just like makes it so nice, so fluid. Just makes it great. So that was a really nice way to play 3 again. What about you guys, though? What's been really good on Switch 2 for you?
I mean, I have to go back to my favorite Nintendo character and say it again. Kirby and the Forgotten Land Switch 2 edition, man. It's like the original game is like just being wrapped in a warm blanket of a video game. It's just such a cozy, wonderful game. And then you just add 60 FPS to it. You add the new content. And it's like getting a whole nother comforter thrown on. Now you're double wrapped in this just cozy ass game.
Yeah.
And it really, I don't often replay games because I don't have time to these days, but I was more than happy to just play through the entirety of the main game again at 60 FPS because it just made an already fantastic, comfy game even somehow better. And Kirby really has stood out to me on Switch 2. Yeah.
What about you, Derek?
Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of lower key titles because the big games I've played is Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, Silk Song. None of these are low key
You
titles.
played Hitman a bit, though, didn't you?
I played Hitman a bit. Hitman was definitely a lot of fun. I think that's it has its place and can be a lot of fun, but it doesn't stand out to me in the same way that it's how it's been as a family. Like there's something special about helping my son get through Donkey Kong